up on this Thursday edition of Newsline at noon, the U.S. Federal Reserve ends its massive bond buying program, citing improving prospects for the economy. But it says it will maintain near zero interest rates for a considerable time. The business sentiment of Korean manufacturers dips to its lowest point this year, despite the government's spending spree in recent months. Plus, proposed high-level talks between the two Koreas are called off, with North Korea demanding Seoul stop activists sending anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Thursday, October 30th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. We start with a decision that was widely expected but could have great reverberations around the world. The U.S. Federal Reserve has now completely pulled the plug on its 6-year-long monthly bond buying program, citing improving prospects for the U.S. economy.
And it also decided to keep interest rates near zero for a considerable period of time. Kim Min-ji reports.
It's official. The Federal Reserve has called time on the quantitative easing stimulus program it started in 2008 during the global financial crisis. The widely expected decision came at the end of a 2-day meeting of the Federal Open Market Committee in Washington. In a statement released on Wednesday, the Fed said there has been a substantial improvement in the outlook for the labor market and that the broader economy has grown stronger. The Fed also expressed confidence the gradual economic recovery in the U.S. will continue despite a global economic slowdown. With the focus on achieving maximum employment, the U.S. central bank said it will maintain the 0 to 0.25% target range for interest rates for what it called a considerable time. It added that a rate hike could take place if the committee sees progress towards its employment and inflation objectives. However, experts point out that uncertainties will linger because of the vagueness in the term used by the Fed.
Perhaps until the December meeting, we are going to see this enhanced volatility, because now there's going to be speculation about what are they going to change the considerable time language to. Once they give us a little bit more guidance and specificity with that, it could actually tamp down some of the market volatility because there will be less guesswork involved.
At its highest point, the central bank was pumping $85 billion a month into the financial system. It started cutting back on the program in increments last year as the economy steadily picked up. Since the program's introduction, the Fed has made more than $4 trillion in bond purchases. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korean businesses are bearish about the prospects for an economic recovery next year, despite extensive government efforts to spur growth. Why? Well, they mainly point to external risk factors, but this low business sentiment is definitely having a negative effect on real economic figures as well. Kim Ji-yeon tells us more.
Business sentiment in Korea's manufacturing sector has dropped to the year's low this month, despite government efforts to boost economic growth. An official from the Bank of Korea attributes the decline to economic uncertainties, largely stemming from China and the Eurozone and the fluctuation of the Korean currency. The low business sentiment is being reflected in the real economy as well. Industrial output recorded negative growth for the second straight month, declining nearly 1% in September from the previous month. And companies are not expecting the situation to improve anytime soon. In a survey of 125 chief executive officers in Korea, more than 90% of respondents said they expected the business climate next year to be similar or worse compared to this year. Less than 9% of the respondents said the Korean economy would be better next year. A lack of new growth engines was cited as the biggest concern, and a majority of those surveys said they plan to focus more on improving their financial stability than on expanding their business. The government says its utmost priority is revitalizing the Korean economy. President Park Geun-hye, in her parliamentary address on Wednesday, said that the government would increase its budget by $19 billion next year to spur growth. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics confirmed its third quarter profit was the lowest in more than 3 years because of slowing sales of its smartphones. The Korean tech giant reported Thursday that its profits in the July to September period totaled $4.4 billion, down a whopping 60% from a year earlier. Now, that's in line with its guidance released earlier this month. Korea's LG Electronics, however, posted a record sales in its mobile division. LG says its quarterly smartphone shipments jumped nearly 40% from a year earlier, hitting nearly 17 million units, driven largely by strong sales of its flagship G3 smartphone. So it's not just LG that did well in the third quarter. Another Korean firm doing well is Naver. The country's largest portal operator is enjoying solid growth momentum thanks to the successful global launching of its mobile messenger line. Naver said Thursday that it posted an operating profit of $180 million in the third quarter this year, up 88% from a year earlier. Overall sales during this period rose 22%, while net profits jumped a staggering 92%. Thanks to Line's robust growth, Naver's overseas revenue expanded over 50% on year to reach $218 million, accounting for 1/3 of Naver's total sales. And staying on the economic front, Korea posted a tourism account surplus for the first time in 28 months, thanks mainly to the surging number of Chinese visitors to the country. Data compiled by the Central Bank and the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute shows foreign tourists spent a total of $1.7 billion last month, up 35% compared to a year earlier. The record figure was largely credited to the increased number of Chinese tourists, which accounted for almost half of all foreign visitors to the country.
Now, the leaders of Korea's rival parties have been delivering their respective policy speeches on how to revive Korea's slow economic recovery. And it shouldn't come as a great surprise that they had very different ideas about how to tackle the issues at hand. Chairman of the ruling Saenuri Party, Kim Moo-sung, called for deregulation, promoting the service industry as a means to create new jobs and finding new growth engines. The interim leader of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, Moon Hee-sang, had other ideas, saying the focus should be on consumer-driven growth, not on giving tax breaks to conglomerates and hiking taxes on tobacco and cars. The two Koreas would have been sitting down for high-level talks as we speak if North Korea had agreed to Seoul's proposal to hold the dialogue today. The North says it's only prepared to show up if the South Korean government stops activists flying these propaganda leaflets across the border. Seoul says it's still ready to talk, but there are no plans to reach out to the North, for the time being at least. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
North Korea has turned down South Korea's proposal for a second round of high-level talks slated for this Thursday. In a message sent early Wednesday morning via the Inter-Korean military hotline, the North said it is up to Seoul to decide whether to proceed with the high-level talks or to cling on to the anti-Pyongyang leaflet campaigns by South Korean activists. South Korea's unification ministry reiterated it has no legal grounds to ban the activities of civic groups.
Although we maintain a consistent stance of resolving issues through inter-Korean dialogue, we cannot give in to unjustifiable demands.
The two Koreas agreed to meet for high-level talks sometime between late October and early November upon a visit to South Korea by a high-level North Korean delegation last month. Since then, tensions have escalated over the controversial leaflet launches, even leading to an exchange of fire across the border. While the meeting may not happen within the planned time frame, some experts say both parties will want to talk things out within this year.
High-level talks are essential for improving inter-Korean relations and must take place this year in order to smooth things out for 2015. It could take some time, but the possibility of a second round of high-level talks is high.
Still, it's a question of who will reach out first. South Korea says it is open to talks, but made clear that it does not have plans to make additional proposals to the North for now. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
North Korea and Japan have wrapped up talks on Pyongyang's investigation into Japanese nationals abducted by the North in the 1970s and 80s. Speaking to reporters after meeting North Korean officials in Pyongyang, Junichi Ihara, who is Tokyo's top diplomat for Asian affairs, said his delegation stressed that the abduction issue should be given the highest priority. He also urged Pyongyang to speed up the process. North Korea said the investigation was underway in burial grounds of Japanese citizens. Pyongyang stressed it will inform Japan of any developments on that front as well. The two sides also touched on other issues, including Japanese survivors of the war who stayed in the north. The talks held in Pyongyang were the first of their type in a decade. Now let's get a check on some of the global headlines we're following this hour. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by for us at the News Center.
Eunice, finally some positive news out of the epicenter of the Ebola outbreak. World health officials say the outbreak in Liberia appears to be on a decline.
You're absolutely right, Jin-joo. Liberia, of course, has been one of the 3 West African countries hardest hit by the epidemic, recording the most number of cases and deaths. But the WHO now says it is cautiously optimistic that things may be turning for the better, while adding the battle at large is far from over. Our Connie Kim has the details.
There's a glimmer of hope in the fight against Ebola in Liberia, the country hit hardest by this latest outbreak. The World Health Organization says it has solid evidence that shows the rate of new cases has been dropping for more than a week.
The actual number of newly reported cases is beginning to decline in Liberia. Most of you somewhat aware of this. It appears that the trend is real in Liberia.
The WHO officials said there are now scores of empty beds in clinics and the number of burials is on the decline. He cited a major public awareness campaign and safer burial procedures as major factors behind the falling numbers. However, the Global Health Organization stressed this deadly epidemic is far from over and more financial support is necessary. The WHO initially said it needed $260 million to bring the epidemic under control, but only half of that figure has been met. Despite the optimism in Liberia, Ebola cases in neighboring Sierra Leone and Guinea are showing no signs of improvement. On top of that, Mali confirmed its first Ebola case just last week. The WHO says there have been about 3,000 new reported cases of Ebola since last weekend, bringing the total to more than 13,000. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Finance ministers from dozens of countries have showcased their resolve to tackle global tax evasion by signing a pact that would end bank secrecy. The first signatories to the Multilateral Competent Authority Agreement came from 51 countries. It would enable governments to share tax information automatically starting 2017. Led by Europe's 5 largest economies, it was signed on Wednesday in Berlin by most EU countries, as well as known tax havens like the Cayman Islands and the British Virgin Islands. Noticeably missing, though, in the bunch were Switzerland and the United States. Citing an economist, Business Insider says roughly $7.4 trillion are stashed away and go unreported, depriving governments of billions of dollars in tax revenue each year. Search efforts are intensifying at a tea plantation in central Sri Lanka after heavy monsoon rains unleashed destructive landslides there. The country's disaster management minister said more than 100 people are believed to be under the mud and debris. Other officials put that figure upwards of 500. Local reports say an area of about 2 kilometers was affected by the landslide, crushing some 140 houses buried under 9 meters of mud, according to one military official. Yet another official said many children have been orphaned as their parents were believed to have been home when the mudslide struck. Search efforts have been hampered by bad weather and the possibility of even more landslides. And Zambia is in a state of mourning after its leader, President Michael Sata, passed away following a period of deteriorating health. Authorities say his wife and son were by his bedside when the 77-year-old died at London's King Edward VII Hospital late Tuesday night. Sata, who served as the country's leader since 2011, had disappeared from public view months ago. The government did not publicize his health condition. Vice President Guy Scott, a white Zambian of Scottish descent, has been named the country's acting president. He said new elections will be held within the next 90 days.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about 11.
Now, economic revitalization was the focus of President Park Geun-hye's policy speech at the National Assembly on Wednesday, and encouraging foreigners to do business in Korea is part of her administration's push to achieve that goal. So the government has designated this week Foreign Investment Week, opening doors to investors from around the world. Song Ji-sun has the details.
If you're interested in investing in Korea, this week may be a good time to start, as Korea's Trade Ministry is holding its annual Foreign Investment Week. Over 300 foreign investors from 22 countries are visiting the country for this occasion, including the investment chiefs of global companies like Boeing and General Electric. Nearly $60 million worth of contracts were signed on the first day of this year's Foreign Investment Week alone, with an American company acquiring $50 million of commercial real estate property, and a Spanish corporation agreeing to invest $7 million into construction of a marina city on Korea's Jeju Island. Organizers are also holding sessions for foreign investors and introducing business opportunities to them that center on Korean cultural contents. They're also pinpointing prospective sectors that could benefit upon implementation of a Korea-China FTA. Later this evening, Seoul's Trade Ministry will be hosting its annual Foreign Companies Day at COEX. At this year's event, Corning will be receiving the most prestigious Gold Tower Order of Industrial Service Merit for investing an accumulated $2.5 billion and creating jobs for over 3,000 employees, while at the same time helping Korea earn its reputation as the world's leading display maker. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Korea is charting a path to the widespread use of digital documentation, which means a more paperless society, not only in meeting rooms and conferences, but also in our daily lives. This is just one of the goals being pursued at the ongoing International Telecommunication Union meeting down in Busan. Shin Se-min has this report.
Everything is going digital these days. From paying taxes to filing out resident registration documents, the use of electronic documentation has made tasks like these much more convenient. Korea is already a leader in the government digital documentation field. But some sectors are still reliant on paper, and experts say it may be a while before the use of electronic documentation is as widespread.
It is a cultural task, and it won't be easy trying to bring everyone on board. But considering the era that we live in, digitalizing documents is something that needs to be done, and soon. There will be no more paperwork if it all goes digital.
But there's still a number of obstacles. Only 43% of institutions and businesses in Korea use electronic documentations, lower than the government's aim of 50% by 2015. And experts attribute the gap to a lack of understanding and awareness among everyday users. A group of experts gathered on the sidelines of the quadrennial ITU conference on Wednesday to discuss the possible directions for Korea in fully implementing these services on the domestic front and making inroads to the global market.
Fostering growth among private enterprises is the key to helping the sector expand. If the government puts more effort into sponsoring these services in the finance and medical sectors, where electronic documents are widely used, there will be no concerns about reaching the everyday user.
The National IT Industry Promotion Agency has already gotten a head start, and officials there say digital documentation services will soon be a reality in the IT sector. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Busan.
Now, an apple a day may keep the doctor away, and the same phrase could be applied to a glass of milk, but not if you drink too much of it. A group of Swedish researchers say downing too much milk could double your chance of dying early. Researchers at Uppsala University conducted a 20-year study on 100,000 people's dietary habits. The results showed that those who drank 3 or more cups of milk a day died earlier than those who drank fewer than that. Also, according to the study, milk did not help in preventing bone fractures, but the researchers were quick to point out that they didn't consider other factors such as alcohol consumption, smoking or weight, and they don't want to discourage people from drinking a moderate amount of milk every day. Now, a video showing a woman walking through the streets of New York City has gone viral. Now, that might sound innocuous enough, but the lady in question was subjected to scores of catcalls by men on the street over the course of the day that she filmed this video. The video, which can be found on YouTube, is part of a social media campaign calling for an end to this kind of street harassment. Connie Lee reports.
Girl, how you doing? Hey, beautiful.
This is a hidden camera video shot all around New York City. It shows 24-year-old Shoshana Roberts, an aspiring actress wearing jeans and a black t-shirt, walking around the city and receiving all kinds of comments from random men on the streets.
Wow.
At one point, a man even follows her for up to 5 minutes. In just over 10 hours, Shoshana had to endure more than 100 unsolicited comments. The video is a public service announcement made in partnership with nonprofit firm Hollaback, which hopes to combat the issue.
Street harassment is sexual harassment that happens in public space. So we're talking about groping, stalking, public masturbation, verbal comments that happen on the street, even gestures.
Since it was uploaded on YouTube on Tuesday, the video has been watched over 10 billion times and received over 50,000 comments. Organizers say they want to reveal the extent of street harassment against women and to show that it should not be tolerated. Hollaback estimates that up to 90% of women experience some sort of street harassment at some point in their lives. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. It's cloudier than it was earlier here in the capital, and as we can see on our satellite map, the clouds are rolling into the nation, and soon the whole peninsula will see mix of sun and clouds. And the top temperatures will be on the mild side, rising to above 20 in many regions. So today will be a bit milder and cloudier under dry conditions, so be extra cautious around fire. But the dryness in the air will be relieved soon as we have nationwide showers in the forecast this weekend. So if you have any plans to be outdoor, take the weather into account. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the daytime high in the capital, Gwangju and Busan, will be all topping of the 21, while Daegu will rise to 20 this afternoon. Now, on to other regions. Jeju Island and Daejeon will be getting up to 21, while Dokdo sees a high of 17. But that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Mark and I'll be back at the same time on Friday. Thank you for watching.